So let's get to the good stuff here. We've done a lot of seminars on a lot of different topics. When I designed this seminar on proper rod selection, for starters, I knew there was just going to be a smaller crowd than usual, which I'm happy about. I like intimate crowds, okay? Everybody seems to think that they know everything about rod selection, and yet, even though it's a topic that isn't really talked about a lot, I mean, come on, it's absolutely pivotal to your success on the water. With any sport, having the proper equipment and using the proper gear at the right time is, you know, I can't stress it enough how important it is for you to be successful out there. Now, understand that in 60 to 90 minutes, we're not going to be able to talk about everything about every rod because there are countless different rods out there for various applications. But what I want to do is share with you some, I don't want to say basic, but even some advanced stuff on rod components, rod technology, and certainly we're going to go over a variety of different rods and why we fish particular rods for particular reasons. And I'm sure that when it's all said and done, you'll walk away and you'll definitely learn something along the line. I just ask you to please save your questions for the end, otherwise I'll be sitting here forever answering questions. Once we get through the seminar, we're also going to do a raffle. Everybody get their raffle tickets? Okay, no, if you didn't get your raffle tickets, you got his? So he's ready to take your money already. We're going to raffle off some gift cards to be used here at Chaos, courtesy of Pompano Ford. If you're in the market for a vehicle, Pompano Ford, those guys will hook you up with some great trucks. And again, they're a supporter of our seminar series here. So a big hand to Pompano Ford for that. Okay. You think now I can get a discount on a truck? I mean, what more does a guy have to do, right? For the love of God. Okay, so let's get into it real quick here, guys. For starters, let's talk about some of the basic components that go into your typical rod, just so we all understand the different components. And we'll start at the bottom and we'll work our way up. In this particular case, we've got a pretty heavy trolling rod. It has an aluminum butt, okay, with a gimbal, the gimbal being on the bottom right here, designed to latch into a fighting belt or obviously into a rod holder so it doesn't spin and it secures it in place. This is very, very important, these gimbals. There are rubber caps to put over the gimbal in the event that you want to fish with this stand up and stick it into your gut and go home, you know, with all your jewels intact, okay? So there are rubber caps that go on there. These metal butts are available in various configurations and sizes. And when would you use a metal butt versus not having a metal butt? Well, we know when you're offshore trolling with big game gear and you're fishing with these heavy and expensive reels, the Penn Internationals, the Accurates, the Simoneaux, you know, obviously you want to secure that reel. You need a nice, strong aluminum butt. You're targeting big fish, may it be sharks, swordfish, blue marlin, you know, so that's the area where you're going to be fishing with an aluminum butt. These are available in straight butt configurations and bent butt configurations. And I don't have every rod here, but obviously bent butt configurations, you guys can certainly see plenty of them throughout the store here. Now, there are also some butts which offer the best of both worlds. It's an aluminum butt, it's a straight butt, and keep in mind this is a fully custom Chaos rod that is literally customized to the T, as you can see. This is not one of my rods. All my rods are the black and gold series, the Chaos series, but this gentleman, this is, you know, his preference and color pattern. So this really is a tricked out rod, and Mr. Morty looks like he got himself a great stick. Really nice roller guides, but more importantly, that aluminum butt. Look what I can do with that butt. I can just push that button and I can go from a bent butt configuration to a straight butt configuration. Now, why would I need to do that? Because keep in mind, what benefits does a bent butt rod offer you? Anyone know what benefits a bent butt rod versus a straight butt rod might offer you? Okay, so his answer was keep it in a rod holder so you can reel it in. Certainly that's one of the benefits, but leverage. It's all about leverage. It's all about the fulcrum and the angle of attack. You know, that's what we'll call it. And keep in mind, you know, I might get a little passionate when it comes to some of the things that I talk about when it comes to rod selection, even though overall it's, it's a boring subject. To me, it isn't. To me, it's really, really important. And I look at all of my tackle and I have an intimate relationship with every rod and reel. I know how it reacts, I know what its breaking point is, and I know what application that rod is for. But again, just want to point out that you can see that there are many options here. This is the latest and greatest, having that ability to go from that bent butt position to the straight butt position. Okay, something to keep in mind. Marshall, what's the manufacturer of this? Remind me? Winthrop, that's right. Same as the guides. So really high end, really specialized equipment. A lot of the guys that are straight or direct dropping is the correct term for swordfish nowadays are using this type of configuration. Okay. Also, there is another option on trolling outfits. Instead of using an aluminum butt, you can use a slick butt. And let's see, here's a example. So rather than having an aluminum butt down on the bottom, this is a slick butt, as you can see. Obviously, it doesn't move into any other position. The nice thing about a slick butt is, number one, it's lighter than the aluminum butts, and it's very easy to get in and out of the rod holder under pressure. Okay, so if that rod is doubled over on a big fish and you need to pull it out of the rod holder, that slick butt is real easy. It's very durable, more durable than the EVA foam. It doesn't chip or peel, and sometimes that'll happen with a foam butt section if you're using it very often and going in and out of your rod holders. They're susceptible to wear and tear, normal wear and tear. The slick butt's not so much. Okay, so again, lightweight, easy in and out of the rod holder, certainly an option on some offshore tackle. However, it also includes an aluminum reel seat, so you still get that strength. And again, we're working our way up, so let's talk a little bit about that reel seat. When would you need an aluminum reel seat versus a graphite reel seat? Anybody? Okay. If I'm taking a larger, heavy-duty conventional reel and I'm targeting big game, billfish, sharks, swordfish, I not potentially, but I'm going to clamp that reel to that rod. Everybody familiar with a reel clamp, of course. Well, if you have a reel clamp on your reel, on these bigger reels, you certainly want that aluminum reel seat for strength, for rigidity. You want that all to be one cohesive unit. Okay, you don't want that reel to wobble side to side. Anybody ever go out there, pick up an outfit, and the reel's kind of just not fitting really properly? You know, what a nightmare that is. Okay, so again, those are aluminum reel seats offer strength, durability. They're lightweight. Aluminum is very lightweight, and certainly they are far stronger than a graphite reel seat. However, in many applications, you don't need an aluminum reel seat. So why pay the extra money? Why add the extra weight if you don't need it? Okay. Next, of course, is the foregrip here. In this particular case, EVA foam. Okay, it is the standard pretty much in almost every rod that you'll see has foam grips. Okay, they're lightweight, they're comfortable, they're durable, they're affordable. It really is the majority of all rods out there. But there are some other options. There are cork tape, and again, you know, there's probably even 50 other options that I don't know about because I'm not a rod builder. Okay, I'm not one of these specialists that's back there actually wrapping these rods. However, like I said, this EVA is the staple across the board. Next is the blank material. This is very, very important, is that blank material, is making sure that the rod that you potentially purchase, that you have custom built, or that you're fishing, is made out of the correct material. The most popular, anybody? E-glass, okay? Fiberglass, basically, is the most popular rod design, almost always has been and still is today. It offers a great value as far as the amount of strength that it offers based on the weight of the rod. It's extremely versatile, okay? And there are countless rod designs out there that are built on e-glass. From there, you can fish a graphite rod. And just as an example, we'll put this e-glass rod down and grab a graphite rod. The benefits of graphite are what? Weight. Okay, for starters, weight. It is absolutely really, really light, right? It's very, very light. It's very sensitive also, extremely sensitive. So when you're fishing a scenario where sensitivity is important, graphite is really, really important. However, it's also brittle, okay? It's brittle. It's not as strong as the e-glass, okay? It isn't. So you have to be careful with graphite and what application you're going to use it in. If I'm targeting broadbill swordfish, am I going to fish a graphite rod? No, no way, okay? On the other hand, if I'm fishing a soft twitch bait for snook and juvenile tarpon held up under a mangrove shoreline, and I want to be able to feel every little twitch of that twitch bait that I'm fishing, would I fish a graphite rod? Absolutely. Okay, so again, it all depends on the scenario that you're fishing. And then there is something called composite rods. A composite rod is a mix of graphite and e-glass, okay? And correct me if I'm wrong with anything that I'm saying here, Marshall, because again, these guys are the specialists when it comes to rod building and materials. But that composite material, that combination, offers you the best of both worlds. It gives you the sensitivity and it gives you the strength. Okay, so there are times when, for example, with live bait rods, you may want a composite rod. We prefer the composite rods on all of our live bait rods because it offers us that sensitivity. It's a little bit softer, but it has plenty of backbone, plenty of strength with that e-glass. It's an all-around great option on offshore conventional outfits, or I should say near-shore coastal conventional outfits. Not something, again, that I'm going to be using if I'm targeting blue marlin, or if I'm targeting broadbill swordfish, or big sharks, you know, any kind of really big fish. I'm going to stick with that e-glass design, okay? So we've got the e-glass, we've got the graphite, we've got composite, a combination of the two, and then there are some space age, so to speak, materials, some state-of-the-art materials like carbon fiber, okay, carbon fiber. Super, super lightweight, right? Super, super expensive, right? Yes, okay, is the answer to both of those. So it offers you the advantage of an extremely lightweight blank with special characteristics, including being incredibly strong. However, you're going to pay. You're going to pay that price. And it's important to know all of these materials because, you know, I hear story after story of guys that just bought a new boat. They walk into, you know, a big box retailer. There's rods on the shelf, and the associate sells them a whole ton of stuff that they don't even need. You know, they're buying the wrong stuff. They don't even know what they're buying, and they don't know the difference between what an e-glass rod is supposed to do and what a graphite rod is supposed to do. And they're taking somebody's word for it. I say take your own word for it. You know, get educated and understand what you're purchasing and what you're fishing with, because it makes a very big difference. It really does in a lot of different applications. Guide selection. This could potentially be the most confusing aspect in all of fishing, you know, is guide selection. And there are so many different options. You have aluminum oxide guides, okay, right here, that are not really designed for braid. It's a great guide, an affordable guide material if you're fishing monofilament, okay? Can you fish braid with it? You can, but you jeopardize nicking or scraping that ring on the inside of the guide. And as soon as that happens, as soon as you get a tiny little scratch on the inside of that ring, what's going to happen? You're going to bust off every fish. We call it premature tackle failure, okay? That's what we call it. And it's going to happen every time. And not only will it happen while you're fighting fish under load, it'll happen when you're just casting baits. You go to cast a jig and pop, and your lure goes, and you go, what the hell just happened? Okay, and you may have had a little nick in your guide, very, very likely. But they're so small, you don't even see it. Okay, it's not even like you can look at it and go, oh, there it is, there's a crack right there. Sometimes it's just like a little hairline fracture, you know, we'll call it, that you don't even see with the naked eye, but it's enough to create mayhem and havoc. And if you don't get that replaced or repaired, you might as well throw that rod in the garbage, because every single time you put it under load, something's going to fail. okay? One way that, is a good way to inspect those guides is with a little Q-tip. And you just kind of run it around the inside of the guide, and oftentimes those little strands will stick to those little hairline fractures, and you'll see that you have a flaw in that guide. However, for a basic rod that you're going to be fishing monofilament with, for example, our kite rods, okay, these are the rods that we fish primarily for sailfish, dolphin, blackfin tuna, cobia, king mackerel, wahoo off of our kite rods. I'm fishing monofilament, okay, on these rods. Am I going to be okay with a guide that's designed for monofilament line? Yes. Not a trick question. Okay, yes, I'm going to be okay because I know that I'm not going to be fishing braid on this outfit. On the other hand, on my slow pitch rod that I'm only fishing a very, very thin PE line, a braid, what kind of guides do I need? Torzite. Of course, you absolutely need. We'll talk about Torzite in a second. Dig deep, anyhow. Okay. Yeah. So point I'm making is understand what you're going to be doing with that rod, okay? Before you just pick it up off the shelf, may it be here at Chaos or may it be anywhere else, certainly we hope it's right here at Chaos, make sure that you understand how you're going to be fishing that rod. And if you believe that you may switch it up in the future, think about that now. Okay, think about that now. If that rod needs to be versatile to be able to fish monofilament and braid, you may want to step it up. So you've got aluminum oxide. The next step up is alkanite. Okay, alkanite is a very affordable guide. Okay, it's durable. It's we'll call it, you have good, better, best, alkanite being good. Okay, and for a lot of guys, it'll hold up perfectly to monofilament and braid. If you're not out there fishing every single day, 10 hours a day with braided line, and you're only out there, a weekend warrior once every couple of months, you may be okay with alkanite. The next step up in the staple across the industry primarily right now are SIC guides. Anybody ever hear of SIC guides? Okay. Silicone carbide, correct? Okay. So extremely durable. They go from, remember what I said on the alkanite is good, better being SIC. Okay, they're great guides. They'll hold up to braid. They'll hold up to monofilament. And you will likely never have a problem with SIC guides. So middle of the road, a great option if you think you're going to build a new rod or a new set of rods and you may fish braid with them in the future, you may want to choose the SIC guides, okay? And again, we're continuously talking or still talking about ring guides, okay? We're not talking about roller guides. From SIC, you have Torzite. Torzite is the latest and greatest. We're now talking about having micro guides, really, really small, that are made out of titanium. Okay, so you have titanium frame guides on here with Torzite rings that pretty much you can take a steel cable inside these guides, like a file, and rub it on the inside of this guide and you will never damage that guide. Okay, so if you're going to be fishing an outfit with braid a lot and you really want the durability and you want to go from good, better, best, then go with the Torzite guides. Okay, and the nice thing about it is when you build a custom rod, you have that option, right? You can choose. You can say, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is how I'm going to be doing it. What do I need? What should I outfit this rod with? Okay, and I know there's, a lot of different subjects that we're talking about, but it's relatively easy once you understand it all and when you understand the concept of it all, okay? So you have different levels, good, better, best. We're not going to dwell too much more on the guides. Just understand that you do have a lot of options and those options matter, okay? Those options matter. The spacing of the guides, the size of the guides, those are also technical issues, which we're not going to get into right now because that's a different seminar altogether. Then you have roller guides. We'll go back to Morty's custom rod, okay, who's got these absolutely beautiful Winthrop roller guides. Why would I use a roller guide versus a ring guide?
Less friction.
Less friction. Okay, that is the correct answer, less friction. So if I'm offshore targeting these big game fish, the marlin, the swordfish, the sharks, blue marlin, whatever it may be, roller guides are really, really important for reducing that friction on your line. And what does friction cause? Heat. And guess what heat does to line? Absolutely destroys it. Destroys it, okay? And if you don't believe me, I'm gonna kind of give you a little test. Take a piece of monofilament. I don't care if it's 30 pound, 50 pound, I don't care what it is. 20 pound, about that long, okay? Tie one end to something and just keep it really taut. And then take a piece of toilet paper and just put a little piece of toilet paper between your two fingers and rub it real quick on that line. And the line's gonna go pop from a piece of toilet paper, something that soft. Why? Because it created heat and friction. Now, when you're offshore in a $7 million custom sport fishing yacht, that's not me, I'm just saying, when you're offshore in a $7 million custom sport fishing yacht, and you're fishing in these big money marlin tournaments all over the world, some of them, the recent white marlin tournament, the guy won $2.7 million on an 83-pound white marlin. $2.7 million for one fish. Do you think that guides are important for that team when they're at that level? Okay, because losing one fish could cost you $2.7 million, and wouldn't that suck, right? So roller guides are really important. There's a variety of different styles of roller guides out there. Everybody's familiar with AFCO. Okay, AFCO. However, there are other options. Winthrop, Stewart roller guides, and some of the latest and greatest guides, they get, back in the day, guys were afraid to fish braided line with roller guides because of the tolerances on the side of the wheel and the side of the roller. And sometimes that braid could have been trapped on the side of that roller. That's no longer the case. Guide technology has come a very long way, okay, a very long way. And today's guides are designed for not only mono, but also braid, because a lot of the offshore fishermen nowadays are fishing braid, okay, with a mono or a fluorocarbon top shot. On the inshore side, not only, when you're offshore targeting big game, but here's a live bait rod that's designed with roller guides, okay? This is the kind of rod that, first of all, it's feather light. Okay, it's a composite rod, and here's a perfect example. Remember when we talked about the mix of the graphite versus the e-glass? So you can see if you can, and it might be a little challenging from there, but this is all graphite, 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 and then it transitions. See how it gets darker? It now transitions to the e-glass. So you have the strength, you have the lightweight, you have the sensitivity. This is an absolutely awesome stick. It's got the roller guide. So the guy who's going to have this is going to be a professional king mackerel fisherman or even a professional sail fisherman. The guys that are fishing these tournaments where they know that they're targeting fish that, go off on screaming runs. They want to reduce that friction as much as they can. Is it something that the everyday guy needs? No. Okay. Is it something the weekend warrior needs? No. If money's no object, is it going to help you catch more fish? No. But it does give you that little bit more of insurance, when you're targeting those fast running fish. So those, again, I just want to point out that those rollers, like I said, are not only available on offshore rods, but also on inshore rods. And do me a favor, feel that in your hand. How light is that rod?
Wow.
Wow.
Super light, yeah.
That's what he said, wow. And as a matter of fact, I'd like you to feel it too. Okay, is that incredibly light? Can you keep it? Sure, I don't care. Okay. Would you like a reel to go with it? Because, I don't want you to go home feeling empty-handed. Okay. So again, incredibly light, okay, incredibly durable. And here's a perfect example with the rollers. The composite has a graphite reel seat, very light. It does have the gimbal, has the EVA foam, okay. So we've touched on, again, all of these different components, but there's something else that's really important to talk about, and that is the action of a rod and the ratings of a rod. I'm going to say something here, and here's a perfect example. This rod is rated for 15 to 30 pound line. That's what it says right on here. Every rod that you purchase, not only here at Chaos, but at any tackle shop anywhere, and every rod you have at home has a line rating. Am I right? Excuse my language. Okay? There's no way that this rod performs equally well fishing 15-pound line as 30-pound line. That's a big gap, okay? And some rods that are rated from 20 to 80 or whatever these companies put on there, especially these off-the-shelf garbage that you see, okay? There's no way that that rod performs equally well across that entire spectrum. It is simply a guide. It's simply giving you a guide to say, hey, you know, if you want to fish this with as light as 15-pound braid, you could. As heavy as 30-pound mono, you could. Or vice versa. If you wanted to fish this rod with 30-pound braid or 15-pound mono, you could. You can fish this rod with whatever you want, right? I mean, if you wanted to put 80-pound on your reel and fish this rod, you could. You wouldn't have a balanced outfit, and it wouldn't be the right way to go, but nobody's stopping you from doing that. However, understand that these ratings are merely a suggestion. They're merely a suggestion, okay? And it's the same with lure weight. The rod, not this, but you'll see a rod rated, this rod is rated from 1/2 ounce to 4 ounces. What? You're telling me that I can cast a 1/2 ounce lure or sinker the same distance that I can cast a 4 ounce lure or sinker off that same one rod under the same conditions? No. Again, it's merely a suggestion, so at least you're in the ballpark of what you want to do with that rod and how you want to use it. But don't base your purchasing decisions solely on what's on the rod. Base your purchasing decisions on you and on speaking with the sales guy who's selling you that rod and making sure that you understand and that he understands what you're going to be doing with it, where you're going to be, what venues, and so on and so forth. Next is the action. Okay, there's something called a fast rod and a slow rod. $25 gift certificate right now. By show of hands, somebody raise their hand and give me the exact I haven't even asked the question yet. Okay? Give me the exact definition. What is a fast rod? What is a fast action rod? Go ahead, sir. Here's your big chance in life.
Bounces back quick.
It bounces back quick. No.
It gets to the backbone of the rod on the first third.
Close enough. Okay, and I'm going to explain. That's for you. A fast rod. Here's the best way to remember this, okay? A fast rod will just bend right at the tip. Like he said, in that first third, okay? A moderate action rod will bend more. A slow rod will bend all of the way. But the easiest way to really understand what that means is a fast rod will allow you to use the power of the blank fast, quickly. It will impart the power of the blank fast. So a good example of that, I'm going to show you my planer rod. Or even this, okay? You want, when you're targeting fish, especially offshore game fish, big offshore game fish, you know, especially, we'll even say my kite rod, okay? I want to be able to set that hook quickly. I want to be able to drive that hook home into that fish's mouth or throat, whatever, quickly. So I want to be able to gain the power of the rod as fast as I can, right? Okay, very important. For example, imagine if you were trolling and your trolling rods were not fast, they were very slow. A fish comes along, he eats your bait, your rod goes before anything even happens. You want to drive that hook home, so you need a fast rod in certain scenarios where you want that backbone as quickly as you can. You want that power, the power of the rod. You want to be able to access it as fast as you can. On the other hand, a slow rod, you don't really care about the power of the blank. As an example, a slow pitch rod. This has no power almost. It's a very, very slow rod with a lot of bend in it because I'm not counting on the rod to drive that hook home. I'm not jabbing that rod up. I'm not trolling with this rod. So there's a lot of different variations in fast rods, moderate rods, slow rods, okay? And a lot of the actions, a lot of companies rate the action the same way that speed. They'll say this is a fast, or medium action, maybe a moderate rod. It can be really confusing. It's even confusing to me. I got to be honest with you, and I've been on the water for 44 years, okay? And sometimes when people try and explain a particular rod, I'm like, what? Give me the rod. Let me see it. Let me feel it. Let me touch it. Let me bend it. Let me put it under load and see for myself how the rod reacts. But understand that fast means it's only going to bend up at the top before you have the power of the blank. Moderate, more of the rod will bend before you get to the power of the blank. When would you want to use each? Okay, what's the ideal scenario? If I'm casting off the beach, and I want to get a great distance off the beach with a lure or a bait, if this was a fast rod that only bent right here versus a rod that was slower, maybe moderate, that bent much more, which is going to allow me to throw a lure or bait further? The slower rod. The slower rod that loads more. The rod is going to load more energy and unload more energy. That's what throws a lure or a bait, is the energy of the rod. And usually just the top half, because the bottom isn't going to bend like the top half does. So understand what you want to do with that rod when selecting the blank, how you're going to use that rod, what you're going to use it for. Understand those actions. And they can be confusing even for a seasoned angler. It can be confusing, which is why it's very important to consult with the guys that are building your rods to make sure that you understand what you're getting and that they understand what you're looking for. Because you could get the same blank in a slow, a moderate, or fast action. And to the naked eye, before you even touch it, you have no idea what this rod does, do you? You don't know if it only bends up at the tip. You don't know if it bends in a giant U. You have no idea by just looking at it, okay? And a lot of blanks come in various configurations, various actions. So have a clear understanding of that action, okay? And remember, like with the kite rod, I'm kite fishing, my line is going all the way up to the kite, then it's coming down to the water, a sailfish, a dolphin, something eats that bait, the reel's locked up, the line pops out of the clip. I'm reeling as fast as I can to get all of that slack line up. And the second that I come tight, I want to come tight on the fish. I don't want to reel up all that slack and the rod go whoop like a giant spring, okay, because I'm not driving the hook home. And sometimes you'll lose fish that way. Fish will drop a bait that way because they feel it, but there's not enough tension to drive that hook home. Does that kind of make sense? I'm trying to say it as easily as I possibly can. So again, there are certain scenarios where you want that fast action and you want to get to that power of the blank as quickly as you can. And there are other times when you want that soft rod. A variation though, because there's of course variations to everything. This is another kite rod that we have that's nowhere near as fast as the kite rod I just showed you. This is moderate, it's slower. It has a much softer tip and more bend in it, in this rod. Okay, much softer tip and more bend. There are times where we will swap all of our kite rods and fish this rod. Okay, why? Because we're fishing smaller, more fragile baits. Instead of fishing the goggle eyes and the speedos and the blue runners, the really hardy, strong baits, we're fishing very fragile pilchards because it's the only bait around, not because I want to, okay? And when you have those very fragile pilchards, if you fish a fast rod with a hard tip, that bait has no give, there's no bounce, and you're hurting that bait a lot more than even you realize, and ultimately the bait's gonna die much quicker. And if you dangle a dead pilchard from a kite, what's gonna happen? Nothing. I like your answer, right? Nothing, okay? Why fish a live bait if it's not live? So we do everything we can do to keep the bait in as prime condition as we can, and sometimes that means going to a lighter rod with a softer tip that absorbs and, acts as like a shock absorber, so to speak. It's soft, it has a lot of give, so as the boat's moving back and forth and the bait's moving up and down, that extra give allows that bait to remain in prime condition.
A lot of people refer to that as the difference between kingfish rods and sailfish rods.
Excellent point. Okay. Length. The length of a rod is also vital. Okay, and obviously rods come in a wide variety of lengths from 4 foot something to 14 foot something. Okay, wide variety. The average, 7 foot, right? 6.5, 7 foot. Typically is 7 foot is the average live bait rod. An offshore rod, a trolling rod is shorter, 6 foot. Okay, so a lot of different variations. What are the benefits of each? Well, if I need casting distance, if I'm fishing a pier, if I'm fishing the beach, if I'm fishing from a jetty, okay, or even if I'm on a flats boat and I'm targeting bonefish and permit that are really spooky, the closer that I get to those fish, the more likely I am to blow them out. Okay, and they'll just blow out. You guys know what blow out means? The fish hears you, sees you, or feels you, and that beautiful 8-pound bonefish that was right there suddenly goes pow, and there's just a big splash and a pile of mud, and he's gone, and you're going, what just happened? You made a little too much noise, or he saw you, and you blew him out. Okay, so in those scenarios, sometimes a rod that's a little bit longer, instead of 7 foot, maybe a 7.5 or even an 8 foot spinning rod on the inshore flats is going to allow you to present a bait from a further distance. Really important for spooky fish. On the other hand, if I'm offshore trolling, do I care about casting distance at all? No, I don't care about that at all. I care about leverage. Okay, so I don't need a very long rod by any means in a trolling scenario. I'm not casting that rod. Okay, plus the longer the rod is, generally the softer it's going to be. It's going to have more give because, of course, the increased length. So also very important, the shorter rods, if you're speed jigging, for example, vertical jigging, we don't need a long rod. This is a vertical jigging rod, 6 foot, some, 5'8", 6, 6'3", 6'6" at the most for high-speed vertical jigging outfits. I'm not going to hit you. Okay, is the perfect length for these, because if this rod was even 6 inches longer, every time I go to move that vertical jig, more of that rod tip is bending and I'm getting less action on the jig. And you understand that rods do a lot of the work for you. If you choose the right rod in the right application, the rod will do a lot of the work for you. And if you're really not understanding what I mean, the spring in the rod, the parabolic action, will move that jig through the water. If this rod was stiff, 100% stiff, hard as a rock, every time I move this 2 feet, the rod's moving 2 feet, but I have to do all of that work. But with short twitches, as that rod goes, it's doing a lot of the work for me and physically moving that jig. That's something that's really important about slow pitch jigging too, and we're going to talk about that rod in a second. So very important on the length, but understand what the benefits are. Shorter sometimes means more power, like I said on the trolling outfits, but there are other areas where you may want a shorter rod. What if you're fishing from a kayak? Anybody fish from a kayak? Okay. Imagine fishing an 8-foot rod from a kayak. It's a nightmare, right? So there are actually rods that are built specifically for kayak fishermen that are a little bit shorter, so it's easier to maintain control. Another scenario is sometimes we'll go back to that mangrove shoreline where we're targeting juvenile tarpon and snook that are cruising right under a mangrove shoreline, and we're poling right down that mangrove shoreline and we're skipping baits. I don't need a 7 or a 7.5 foot rod. I might bring it down to 6'6" because I could be a little bit more accurate in tight quarters with that shorter rod. So many different venues, so many different configurations. There's no one perfect rod for every application. If you haven't already picked up on that yet, you know, I think you can see that already, that there are so many different tools for different for different applications. Another area where length is important, for example, on this planer rod, okay? This is a rod designed specifically for planer fishing, and it's 8 foot long. Could you get away with a 7-foot rod? Very likely, you certainly could, but the extra length on this planer rod plays a big role because now you've got that bend, it's plenty strong to pull, you know, flagged, plenty strong to pull large planers at high speeds, and you have that bend in that rod that allows you to see every single bite, okay? And it's sturdy, it has plenty of backbone. So it's impossible, like I said, to go over every single scenario, but understand what you're gonna be doing when purchasing that rod, okay?
Mike, if we can jump back to the power rating for one quick second.
Sure.
You know, you see some rods that have like a medium, heavy, fast, or, you know, is that medium, heavy on 6 as well?
So his question is on the power rating. Sometimes you see rods that are medium heavy fast, or medium fast, or light fast. Fast, remember what we said, is how quickly you are transferring power into the blank, okay? But the entire rod as a whole can have different actions. You know, I may not want, if I'm targeting yellowtail snapper, as an example, okay? Do I need a heavy action rod for yellowtail snapper? The fish is this big, for the love of God. I don't need the same rod that I'm gonna target swordfish with, you know? So I could go with a light or a light to medium action rod. It could still be fast, or it could be slow, okay? Or it could be slow. So it's a combination of the two recommendations, or I should say of the two ratings that you have to understand. Not every fast rod is light action or medium action or heavy action, and vice versa, you know, because again, they're all so different, and there are so many different blanks out there and so many different rods out there that it can be mind-boggling, you know. Fortunately, with all of that said, rods are extremely versatile, very, very versatile, and sometimes we choose a rod for various reasons, okay, because here's a vertical jigging rod. We use this rod a lot for vertical jigging. We have for, you know, I can't tell you how many hours we've spent on the water over the years, high-speed vertical jigging. It's an absolutely great rod. That's what it was designed for. Does that mean I cannot fish this rod doing anything else? Absolutely not. It's a great spinner. I can't tell you how many times we go dolphin fishing. As a matter of fact, it's rigged right now with a small hook, and we'll throw a live bait or a chunk bait on this rod. You could fish a wide variety of species. You could fish for snappers and groupers with this rod if you wanted to just, you know, pay out a live bait or a chunk bait. There's no reason that you can't. You can put a lure on here and stick it in a rod holder and troll a lure off the back of the boat. Could you not? Okay, anybody ever troll with spinning rods? My cameraman's going, me? And I'm going, oh my God. Yes, but you can, absolutely. There's no question. You know, so don't think that rods can only be used in specific scenarios. There are, however, very specific rods that you don't want to use in various scenarios, okay? But again, we choose a lot of the rods that we fish for that reason, for the versatility. This in particular, it's a great short, you know, stand-up rod and a spinner. I like conventional rods. Some people like spinners. You know, when I bring guests out on my CV, they may not be really familiar with fishing, they may be new to it, and I'm a little hesitant to put a lever drag reel in somebody's hand that has never gone offshore fishing before. Okay, they're like, what are all these buttons? What does this do? Okay, and I'm like, what are you doing? You know, no. So you put a spinning rod in somebody's hands because it's foolproof, you know, you can't mess up. There's no backlashes, there's nothing that can go wrong. So again, a great, versatile, all-around rod. And if you're just designing a set of rods or, you know, outfitting your boat with a set of rods, think about that versatility, because you don't want to have to go out there and buy 50 rods if you can buy 10 rods that you can use in a lot of different ways. The same with our kite rods, you know. I talked about this before. This is been an absolute staple in my arsenal. It's the KC 15 to 30, 7 foot. It's a composite rod, okay, 7 foot long. It's our kite rods. It's what we have used for 10 years straight, okay? I have 18 of them, okay, and we bring all 18 rigged when we go kite fishing because we're fishing 2 or 3 kites, and the guys on the flatline side of the boat, guess what rod they're fishing? This one. Okay, so even though it's a kite rod that, we call it a kite rod, it really isn't. It's a live bait rod. And you can use it a lot of different ways. You can fish a live bait off a kite with it. You can fish it on the flat line side. It's an absolutely great snapper and grouper rod to fish live and dead baits with. The rod also doubles as an absolutely awesome trolling rod. Okay, no, not for targeting blue marlin. Okay, but how many of you guys are out here targeting blue marlin? How many guys are out here targeting dolphin? Okay, kingfish, sailfish, wahoo. Not high-speed trolling for wahoo because that's a different animal altogether, right? That requires different tackle altogether. But as an all-around versatile rod, this is an absolute staple, and the versatility that it offers is priceless. It really is, because you can use it so many different ways. And it's light. Remember, you don't want to fish. If you get a rod that's uncomfortable, that's heavy and uncomfortable, you're not going to want to hold that rod all day long. You're not going to want to fish with that rod. And the less time that you are fishing with that rod, what does that equate to? Less fish in the boat. Okay? On the other hand, if you're standing there fishing all day long and your bait's in the water, you're going to catch more. I mean, that's the bottom line. So comfort is very, very important. Comfort. That also goes back to the blank material. Because, of course, there are certain materials like the carbon fiber and the graphite that are lighter, okay, that are lighter. So for children, for women, for sissies, whatever, okay, a lighter rod, okay, is going to make a difference. It really is. And you have to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable with that equipment. It has to be an extension of you. And again, like I said earlier, I may go a little bit deep and take it intimately, but I do. It's my passion. It's my life, So to me, I want every rod to be an extension of my arm, an extension of me, okay? So the kite rods, like I said, really, really versatile, really important, and maybe I'm saying the wrong thing. I should say the live bait rods. Get in there, you. On the inshore side, and we're just going to kind of jump back to inshore fishing for a second. Here's a rod, it's graphite, 7.5 foot. It offers me that perfect length of castability, but it's not too long, it's not too short. It's one of probably my favorite inshore rod. Okay, it's rated for 8 to 17 pound line. I fish 8 or 10 pound braid on here. However, I've also can fish monofilament on here. Is this fast or slow? Anybody? Again? Slow, right? Relatively slow. Look at all of that bend. If it did this only, what would it be? Fast, okay? Because then I'm getting to that blank power. Now, keep in mind, why do I like this action inshore? I'm targeting fish like tarpon, juvenile tarpon, not 80 to 100 pound tarpon with this, even though you could, but juvenile tarpon, snook, redfish, trout, bonefish, permit, Spanish mackerel. Okay, it's a very comfortable rod. It's very versatile. I could fish a wide array of different species and venues with this rod inshore. It's got the traditional cork handle. Okay, for inshore fishing, a lot of the inshore rods you're going to see have cork. It's really traditional. It's kind of cool looking. Also has a really nice grip. Okay, that cork. However, I also bring this rod offshore, and we fish for yellowtails. We fish for muttons when we're free lining live baits out. Obviously, I'm not going to put a 6-ounce sinker on this rod, right? Okay, we fish this rod for dolphin, not 50-pound dolphin, but when there's schoolies around the boat, you can put a popper on here, a topwater plug, a bucktail. You can cast it a country mile. When you're up on a weed line, I want that length of that rod. So I can take that bucktail or whatever and whiz it way down that weed line. Because the longer that my bait's in the water, the further away from the boat that I could get it, that lure, the more of a retrieve. The longer it's in the water and the more likely I am to catch fish. If you have to cast 10 feet each time and I'm casting 100 feet, who's going to catch more? Me. Okay? So that length plays a big role in that venue as well. And like I said, it's a very versatile rod. Triple tails, sheep's head. I don't think there's any fish out there that we haven't targeted and caught with this. And remember this, most people make the mistake of fishing rods that are too heavy. They underestimate what this rod could handle, okay? When I go out here mutton snapper fishing, this is the rod I'm fishing. People look at me and they go, what the hell are you doing mutton snapper fishing with that? I don't need any more than this. Okay, there's plenty of line capacity because I've got 400 yards of braid. I'm fishing in 120 feet of water. Okay, 400 yards. I'm not worried about getting spooled, right? So if I have plenty of line capacity and if my drag is set properly, everybody drag? Okay. If my drag is set properly, and keep in mind these are adjustable. Companies spent millions of dollars, real companies, on creating adjustable drags. It's not set it and forget it. So as long as my drag is set properly and my connections are bulletproof, there's almost no fish that I can't catch on here. You can go out here and catch a 70-pound sailfish on here, couldn't you? Okay, he may, you might have to chase him around with the boat, whatever it is, but if you put in enough time, you're going to catch that fish. The only time you're going to have a problem is when he's straight up and down, you don't really have a lot of lifting power, now do you? Okay, because there isn't a lot of backbone in that rod. There's certainly a lot of backbone for a rod of this size, but not enough for targeting 70-pound fish offshore. So you have to be careful there. But again, very, very versatile. And I would say, going back to it, looking at that, I'd say that's moderate. The rod is bending, and about that halfway point is where it really is getting into the power of the blank. It's not really a slow rod, but it certainly isn't a fast rod. And maybe this is a better way to say it. Fast, moderate, slow. Okay, you know what I'm saying?
If parallel to ground.
If parallel to the ground.
So if you put it
Okay.
down and you make the tip parallel to ground, that's how they
So,
quote unquote try to get really
fast, moderate, slow, you know what I'm saying? It's the same, and regardless if it's a spinner or a conventional rod, okay? And a lot of people may have the misconception that to build a spinning rod, you need a blank designed for a spinning rod. Could I build, Marshall, a conventional rod on a spinning rod blank, or vice versa?
If you look at all of our live bait and spinners for offshore, the series are slightly different from the standpoint of line class because of the way the rod's built, but it's the same length.
Same length. Okay.
Spline the opposite way though. I don't know
Right.
if you've gone into that
No,
yet.
and you just brought that up, and I think that's very important. Anybody ever break a rod? Okay. Anybody ever break a rod? Okay. I was showing somebody a rod. I'm totally embarrassed to tell you this story, but I'm going to tell it to you. Somebody had sent me a custom $700 rod, not a Chaos rod, different brand. They sent me a $700 custom rod that they wanted me to try. And I refused to fish it because I only fish Chaos rods. That's first and foremost. So it's in my truck, no reel, right there. So I was telling some guy about it, and he wanted to see it. So I go out, and I'm like, here, check out this rod. And I'm like, man, this guy told me I can put all of this heat on this rod, and I bent it sideways, and the rod went shatter, poof, poof, right there, broke into like 3 pieces. And I went, oh my God, I just broke this $700. I still haven't told the guy because I'm afraid to tell him, okay? But the reason I broke it, it was totally my fault, 100%. I wasn't paying attention, and I bent the rod sideways. Rods are not designed to be bent sideways. There's a spline, or easier to understand, a spine, just like your spine. This rod has a spine right across the top or across the bottom, depending on if they're building a spinning or conventional rod. When they build that rod, they build it on that line, on that spline, on that spine. They don't build it sideways, okay? And I think we're gonna get a little demonstration I have no idea what he's doing. Okay.
Put the blank on that. That is a ball bearing point. Put your foot on it so it doesn't go flying.
So what we're looking at is a little metal mount right here, and there's a little cone on top of this little mount thing that swivels.
Ball bearing.
Okay, a little ball bearing in there.
Put your foot on it. There you go. Put your foot on the edge of it.
My foot is now on the edge of it.
Watch the labels on the rod, and as you basically put the tip to parallel to ground, what you're going to see is the rod will go to its natural spline. Okay, go ahead and move. Now move it. Watch, it's going to go right back.
What,
Go parallel to ground with your right hand. Bring the tip parallel to ground. Yep, there you go. Keep going a little bit
look,
more.
is that a fast or a slow rod? Fast.
Yeah. Go parallel to ground. All right. See how the white label's moving? Now move the white label while you're holding the tip, and watch what's going to happen. It's going to go back. So what
Got
it's
it.
doing is it's going back to the
So what's happening is as I'm pulling this down, there is a label, and as I release pressure, that label's always going back to the exact same place. So that is clearly indicating to me that that's the spine.
If you put the label sideways and fold it, will it do the same thing?
I don't know. Let's try it out. Ready? Well, it is because I'm not holding it, and it's,
There you go.
and see how it's spinning
So
back?
it's twisting in your hand.
It's twisting in my hand. Here, like right now, it's forcing me. The torque of the rod is going clockwise.
But where you put the guides now, watch what Mike's doing, where you put the guides is going to be exactly where you would see the guides in that use. So the guides on a spinner would be going up the right side, Mike's right arm, and the conventionals would be going up Mike's left arm because they go over the top.
So spine, right up, obviously if this being the spine, the conventional guides are going to be on the left side, on top of the spine. The spinning guides are going to be on the right side, providing the strength of the rod on that spine. Now, in that scenario, we can bend that rod into a giant U. But if you turn a rod sideways and bend it, zing pow.
How do you get the slow pitch guides then? The ones that twist?
It's an excellent question. Let me explain that to you. So on slow pitch rods and on a lot of rods, you will see that the guides are what's called spiral wrapped or acid wrapped, okay? So if you will kind of look, you'll see that this first stripper guide is even with the reel, right here. But then this next guide is cocked, 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 and all the way down to the bottom. So it ends like a spinning reel. See that tip, how it's on the bottom like a spinning reel, but it starts like a conventional reel. Now, I'm not a rod maker, but using common sense, I'm going to tell you that the spine of the rod is right up on the top. That's exactly where this guide is mounted and where the reel seat is mounted for the strength. And just like a spinning rod, this tip and all of these guides are right on the bottom of the spine. Am I right? That's how.
So where does it end up making the transition from one to the other?
Excellent question. So in this particular scenario, as you can see, this is in line with the reel, and then it starts to transition in like a 3-guide spread. Now, also understand why they do this, okay? Why there are certain rods that are spiral wrapped, twofold. Number one, it prevents the reel and the rod from spinning in your hand, but more importantly, this ultra-thin braid, this ultra-thin PE line never touches the blank. Never. No matter how hard you load this rod, this line will never touch the blank, and this line is very fragile. It's incredibly strong, but it's susceptible to damage. So you never want in the slow pitch jigging world for that line to touch the blank. That's why slow pitch rods are spiral wrapped. Not necessary with a lot of other rods because a fast or a moderate rod isn't going to bend like a slow pitch rod. This will bend in a giant U. Okay, these 90 degrees. These rods will not. And as a matter of fact, we're going to kind of show you what I mean by that. Marshall, can I?
So it doesn't become a point of failure where it makes that transition from the spine
No,
cover
never.
to the other?
So if you'll just grab that loop on the bottom, and I'm going to start on the bottom here, and I'm going to go right over top of you. Now, keep in mind, Most people look at this slow pitch rod, and we're not on a subject of slow pitch, but here's an example. Carbon fiber blank, they look at this and go, it just looks like a bass rod, okay? This is the future. This is state-of-the-art technology, which you're looking at right here. You will be absolutely amazed. Go even lower for me.
50-ton carbon fiber.
Okay. Okay, is that a fast or a slow rod? Okay, and look at that. So that is incredibly powerful. And I kid you not, I mean, I'm putting some heat on this thing, okay? And it's not gonna break. And that's nothing compared to what it will do.
Big fish, though. That's it.
I've caught bigger fish than that, pal. Okay, bigger fish than that.
Little swordfish.
Right. Well, certainly not a swordfish rod, but yeah. What's that?
Why the funny?
So, why the funny handle? Split grip. Okay, 2 reasons. Number 1, reduces the weight. I don't need the foam right here. Number 2, when I'm slow pitch jigging, this blank is contacting my armpit, under my arm. So I'm holding the reel right here. I have a connection point here. I have a connection point right there. Triangulation, absolute sensitivity. It's a total extension of my body. Okay, but you have a little grip in the back here because there's times when you do need to stick that right under your armpit to apply a little bit more pressure.
Tell the story, Mike, as to the distance between the front, to his point, the front and the rear grip specifically for you when we were developing.
Absolutely. So everyone is different and everybody has a different reach, right? Okay, our little friend Richie, right there he is, okay, okay, and we'll just, you know what I'm saying, obviously this is the extreme, but everybody is different, so you want to make sure that you design that rod to where it's comfortable for you, because if this is too short, if this is here, I can't get the action that I'm looking for, okay, and I can't do what the rod was designed to do. So in turn, you do need to make sure that the distance between the reel seat and the butt of the rod is for you. Now keep in mind, what we decided on is versatile, happy for 90% of, you know, the individuals. But every now and then, you're gonna get somebody who's either a little bit shorter or a little bit taller who may wanna make some modifications. So that's just something to keep in mind. But again, getting back to this, so you saw in that scenario when we were talking about the power of the blank and the spine. Now, if you asked me to turn this rod sideways and to put that much pressure on it, no way. Not unless you went and got me a brand new one right now, because I wouldn't trust the rod to do that because that's not what it was designed to do. So with any rod, and this was the point that I was making earlier about that light spinning outfit, that as long as you treat the equipment and use it properly, there's almost no fish you can't catch on these rods as long as you do it properly. And I would say 99% of rod failure problems are user error, okay? User error. People, that's right, high sticking it, either applying too much pressure by holding the rod, trying to pull straight up. It's not what the rod was designed to do, okay? Anybody here a fly fisherman? Okay, you are? Okay. So I'm not certainly, I don't want to even say novice fly fisherman. I've spent some time fly fishing. But one of the first things that I learned with fly fishing is never, when you're fighting a fish, lift that rod more than 90 degrees. Am I right? Never lift that rod more than 90 degrees. There's enough bend and enough load in that rod when you're fly fishing, you know, that you don't want to bring it more than 90 degrees, because if you bring it up too high, you're high sticking it and you're going to potentially damage the tackle. So again, it all goes back to understanding not only, here it is, you know, not only what you're going to be doing, but the limitations of the gear that you're using, and that you can use it in a wide variety of venues and avenues. You know, one thing that I do, anybody ever get hung in the bottom? Anybody ever get hung in the bottom? All right, we all have gotten hung in the bottom. So, of course, the first thing we try and do is slack off, bounce it out. You know, we try everything we can do to get unhung from the bottom. But it reaches a point where you realize, damn, man, I'm hung, and I'm just not getting this out. A lot of guys, you know, they'll put the rod down, they'll grab the line, they'll try and pull it out. That's not what I do. I fight the bottom as if it's a fish, okay? I tighten up my drag, I put as much pressure as I can, holding the tackle properly, and I let that pressure build. This is obviously from a drifting boat. And I let the pressure build and build and build and build and build, and I'm paying very close attention until pop. Now I know my breaking point, right? I know that the rod's not gonna break. Something broke. It wasn't the rod, it was either a knot, a hook straightened out, some connection failed, but some sort of terminal connection failed well before the rod broke. The rod's not going to break. The only way the rod will break is if you're fishing an imbalanced outfit. If I put 200-pound braid on here and a reel that's way oversized, a Stella 12,000, okay, that cost $12,000 or something, and I put 200-pound braid and get hung in the bottom and lock it all up, the rod's gonna break because the reel isn't gonna break, the line's not gonna break. The only thing, the weakest point is the rod, okay? But as long as you have a balanced outfit, and that's something that's very important with your entire arsenal of rods and with your rod selection, is making sure that you are fishing a balanced outfit. You know, when it comes to reel, line, leader, a lot of times, you know, guys, remember what I said earlier, a big mistake that I see people doing is fishing tackle that is way too heavy, okay? They're fishing 50-pound braid when they only need to be fishing 30-pound braid. And you may say, well, that doesn't seem to be a big difference, 30 and 50-pound braid. That's a huge difference. It's a huge difference in line capacity on the reel. It's a huge difference in cost of line between 30-pound and 50-pound. It's a huge difference in sensitivity. It's a huge difference in how many fish you catch, because the guy who's deep dropping right next to me fishing 50-pound braid, and if I'm fishing 30-pound braid, guess who's catching more fish? Me, because I'm maintaining more of a vertical presentation than he is, first and foremost. Number two, I have a more sensitive outfit in my hands, so I have a better understanding as to what's happening. I'm not concerned with that 30-pound braid breaking. Have you ever tried to break 30-pound braid? Fresh 30-pound braid, okay? You can pull a truck with that thing, okay? Now keep in mind, when it gets damaged or frayed or nicked, it's gonna fail, okay? But as long as it's not damaged, it's incredibly strong, much stronger than the amount of drag that I'm gonna put on the reel. I just had a conversation with a guy the other day, interested in purchasing a rod and reel, confused about the reel because the reel he saw me fishing, he said only has 17 pounds of drag. And he said the next size up has 25 pounds of drag, but the reel weighs twice as much. Okay, so I said to him, I said, I'm curious, what sort of line are you gonna put on the reel? He said, the same that you had, 40-pound braid. And I said, well, are you gonna put 25 pounds of drag on 40-pound braid? Like that extra drag makes no particular sense in that scenario. So, and not to confuse matters even more, but rod selection is also reel selection. You know, you also have to consider what reel you're gonna fish on that rod, and what you're gonna be doing with it, you know, when designing a rod or when purchasing a new rod. It's much more than just the rod itself. And I can't stress, you know, getting back to the fishing too heavy, you almost see a trend in everything that's happening in fishing in Florida, transitioning from monofilament to braided fishing line, okay? Is there any arena where you see just braid or just mono offering an advantage to braided fishing line? Anybody? Okay. Do we all? What's that? He says anywhere you need stretch. So let's back up a second. So essentially I could fish a size, and I'm just throwing numbers out there so we're all on the same page. I can fish a size 5,000 spinning reel. I can load it with monofilament line because I want some stretch, because I'm using this spinning outfit to fish for dolphin, okay? And I want stretch because dolphin jump. Or I'm fishing for sailfish with this spinning outfit. It's a live bait spinning outfit. It's got a 5,000 size spinning reel on it. I could load it with 20-pound monofilament and essentially get, I don't know, 300 yards of line, okay, on this reel. Or I could fish the same reel I could load it with 30-pound braid, get 500 yards of line, and put a top shot of monofilament on it for the stretch. Now, that's an example of using the same size reel. But what if the guy is using a size 7,000 reel instead of a 5,000 reel? And he fishes 20-pound mono, and now he's got 400 yards of line. 400 yards of line on a Daiwa size 7,000 Isla spinning reel. I can go down to a size 5,000, much lighter, much more comfortable, load it with braid with a mono top shot, and have more line capacity, but a more comfortable, lighter reel, okay? So you have to weigh all of that out because everything today is going to braid. There are very, very few applications where monofilament offers a pure advantage, and even if it does, you can fish a top shot. You don't have to fish, nor do we recommend fishing straight braid right to your lure or your jig or your hook. Obviously, you're going to include a fluorocarbon or monofilament top shot on top of the braid. So it allows you to scale everything down, which means if I can bring the size of the reel down, what can I also bring down? Size of the rod. And if I bring the size of the rod and the reel down, it's lighter, it's more comfortable, it's more sensitive, I'm going to catch more fish. If I'm a yo-yo and I have no idea how to handle my tackle properly, go with the bigger stuff, okay? Because give yourself a little insurance.
How about kite fishing with a release clip?
What's that?
Kite fishing with a release clip, you don't find mono to be an advantage over?
So his question is, do you find mono to be an advantage when kite fishing with the release clip? The answer is, of course I do. This is why we fish specifically mono. However, here's the point that I'm making. I can fish 400 yards of 20-pound test right here. I'm specifically using this outfit. Remember I said I had 18 of them. I'm specifically using this outfit for kite fishing. I know that I'm very likely going to catch sailfish or dolphin. That's what I'm looking for with my kite outfits. Fish that jump. Okay, fish that jump, so I want that elasticity, okay, in that line. I fished a high vis line, so wherever that fish is, I can track it as I'm fighting it. Obviously, I could also see my line going up to the kite clip and back down to the water. So a high vis monofilament in a live bait kite fishing rod is an advantage. However, I could also fill a slightly smaller reel. This is a size 50. I could go to the next size down. I can put 300 or 400 yards of 20-pound braid, okay, which gives me a ton of line capacity, and then put 200 yards of mono on top of it. So I certainly can do that as well and go to a lighter outfit. But then if I took that smaller size reel and put it on this rod, what am I getting? An imbalanced outfit. So you know what I do? Remember the rod that I said I scaled down to? I do have those reels because they're smaller and they have less line capacity, so I do have those reels loaded with braid with a mono top shot. So it all depends, like I said, on the application, and there's not one perfect answer. You know, there's not one perfect outfit for everything. You have to kind of just weigh it all out. Like I said earlier, think about what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be doing it, and how you're going to be doing it, okay? So let's get in just a little bit more on some of these other rods, you know, and why we choose to fish them. We talked about this inshore rod, and like I said, if you go out here yellowtail fishing and mutton snapper fishing, especially yellowtail fishing on the reef, bring a light spinner, just like this. It's all you need. Bring a light spinner, feed out a live bait, because you know, yellowtails, when there's a lot of current, they bite, right? They like current. When there's no current and your chum is sinking straight down, they don't bite. When the water's flowing and there's current, those yellowtail snapper bite. However, they often stay either way back in the slick or down deeper in the water column. By fishing a lighter spinning outfit and freelining, you know, take a jig head, just a little jig head, and put either a shrimp, a piece of bonita strip, a couple big silver sides. You can feed this behind the boat and just keep feeding it out real slow, and that ultra thin line will allow that bait to suspend and to sink deeper in the water column. It's super sensitive because when that current's ripping, if you're fishing tackle that's too heavy, you don't even know if you're getting a bite. I can't tell you how many times. I was just on a 4-day trip with 16 guys on a head boat for 4 days. And the most common thing that I heard was, I don't even know if my jig hit the bottom. What? You paid $999 to come on this boat for 4 days. We're fishing 250 feet of water. And you don't know if your jig hit the bottom, okay? But that's the truth. That's the truth. They didn't know, some of these guys didn't have what we like to call jig awareness, okay, as to where their jig was. Well, of course they're not going to be successful because they don't even get the fundamentals of it. But that's because I look at the guy, he's fishing 80-pound braid, okay, with a 100-pound leader that's 25 feet long. He's fishing a jig that's way too light because his terminal tackle is so heavy and his jig is so light. I'm watching him, and he just keep letting line out, letting line. He's at like 600 feet. He just keep letting line out, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, I'm looking for the bottom. I'm like, you found the bottom a long time ago. There's this giant bow of the line. Your jig is like back there somewhere, dude. You didn't know if you were getting a bite. If the fish came up and hit you in the head with your own jig, you wouldn't know if you were getting a bite, right? Because it's all about the tackle. It's all about the sensitivity, and it's all about understanding what is happening. You know, fishing is about the fundamentals. The tackle certainly plays a very, very big role. But if you don't understand what's in your hands, and if you don't understand how to use it, forget it. You're never going to be a consistently successful angler. You know, are you going to catch fish? Listen, blind squirrel will find a nut every now and then. Okay, that's the truth. And it kills me because sometimes I'll go out there, I'll have a really tough day, I can't find them. I come in and here's some guy on this cabin cruiser, okay? He's like, Mike, look what I caught! And he's got a 60-pound wahoo. And I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? I'm like, and I'm out there trolling the best stuff, custom-made stuff in chaos, you know, and I can't get a bite. I mean, it happens, it's fishing. So every now and then, somebody's gonna get lucky. But day in and day out, he's not going to be a consistently successful angler. You know, keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and start wrapping this up here. Any questions, guys? And again, I mean, it's impossible to talk about a lifetime of fishing and rod selection in an hour and a half. But my goal was just kind of to go over some of this stuff with you, the different components, the different applications, you know, what to look for, and to make sure that you understood that rod selection is vital to your success on the water. Don't overlook it. Don't think, oh, it's okay, or I could just do this, or I could just do that. Certainly you can, but there's so much more to it. And just like every sport and every trade, it's all about the right tools for the job, isn't it? Okay, if you're a mechanic, anybody here a mechanic? There you go. How important are the right tools for the job? Something that you can do with the right tools in 2 minutes would take me 3 hours because I'm driving to Advanced Auto Parts. I'm like, dude, I'm looking for an extension for my wrench because the screw is way over there, right? I mean, you're just, so, you know, just one example where it's vital. The same thing with golf. Anybody a golfer? Okay. I don't golf. That's for people who don't fish, but, okay, but same thing. I'm assuming the right clubs. You know, just like with everything else, you have to have the right tools, but more importantly, you need to know how to use those tools properly, okay?